The rainforest. Exotic, distant, mysterious. Covering only 6% of the Earth's landmass, it contains 50% of the planet's species, provides 20% of our oxygen, and shelters 1/3 of our fresh water. And it's disappearing at the rate of a football field a second. Tonight, on a special edition of Network Earth, we're coming to you from the largest river in the world, the Amazon. 2,000 miles upriver in the heart of the Peruvian rainforest. Is this any place to take a vacation?
You bet. I'm going to look for the first vine and swing and do my Tarzan yell.
Join us as we take you on an eco-tour. It's tourism gone green.
It's just the thrill of a lifetime.
And meet some of the world's foremost experts for a workshop in the jungle.
It's an incredible aerial ecosystem up there.
Eco-tourism. Can it help save the rainforest? The rainforest. If you really want to know what it's like, you've got to go there. Which is exactly what 170 of us did. Only a 4-hour plane ride out of Miami, and we were in Iquitos, sprawling jungle city in the Peruvian Amazon. We were here on an eco-tour, organized by one of the leaders in ecotourism, International Expeditions. We were tourists with a conscience, I guess, willing to spend our vacations roughing it while attending what would be a first-time ever rainforest workshop in the jungle. But first, the mighty Amazon. Still 2 miles wide, even here in Peru, it's the highway for this part of the world. We headed downriver for our final destination, Explorama, an eco-lodge still 4 hours away in the heart of the jungle.
Every one of our staff except for 2 were born right here in the jungle. Not just Peruvians, but were born right here in the jungle itself.
Anthropologist Peter Jensen founded the lodge 27 years ago. I asked Peter what kind of changes he had seen along the river since he had come.
There were only 2 little teeny villages. One was Indiana, and another one closer to Iquitos, were the only areas that there were houses along this entire 50 miles or 80 kilometers to the lodge. Now it's just solid houses.
Is this all been cleared? Is this something that's
This is where they're putting in the cattle for grazing. It'll go for miles and miles, the clearing, just to keep a very few cattle. Just for those cattle? Just for very few cattle.
This was to be a common refrain in the coming week. An exploding population cutting its way ever deeper into a vulnerable and retreating forest. Finally, our river taxis rounded the last bend, and our home for the coming week came into view. Tucked into the jungle like a giant treehouse, with no electricity and no running water, it was not your average hotel. But then, we weren't your average tourists.
I have this one out because I just wanted to see that these things are basically harmless.
And that's a bat-pollinated flower.
It was to be an incredible week of science and adventure.
Ants, stinging plants.
These are the most diverse forests in the world.
From bugs to bats. From close encounters to warm encounters, we were to experience the rainforest as only an eco-tourist can. Coming up next, we'll meet a man who says right where I'm standing, this area of the rainforest has more species of trees than anywhere else on Earth. The rainforest. What a classroom. Our week in the jungle was to be a crash course in rainforest ecology.
Off the top of your head, how many species of insects do you think are within 50 feet of us?
I don't know, conceivably tens of thousands.
Tens of thousands?
Yeah. Especially if you're counting the itty-bitties, and there's a lot of itty-bitties.
Lots of them. Everywhere you look in the rainforest, there are bugs. Big ones, little ones, fuzzy ones, bugs in disguise, even bugs on bugs. And then, of course, there's the most dreaded bug of all, army ants.
Pure Hollywood.
But no matter where you look, there's something new to see.
I've discovered a very interesting vine.
That's Al Gentry, the man who's been called the Indiana Jones of botany.
It's exploration, it's exciting, it's intellectually challenging, and that's what turns me on. And these are the most diverse forests in the world.
And he's been trekking through these tropical forests for 18 years.
Once I was camped in a tent, and I woke up in the morning and the tent was gone. The ants had eaten it. Oh, let's look at this. This is Oncaria. They shipped, if I remember right, 7,000 tons of this out of Peru, out of the Chanchamayo Valley year before last. And they're sending it to Germany to supposedly cure prostate cancer.
And that's just one of the thousands of species here. In fact, Al told us that right where we were standing was the most diverse forest on Earth.
There's 606 plants over 10 centimeters diameter. And out of that 606 plants includes a few lianas, the great big lianas, but mostly trees. There's 300 species. So just imagine, I mean, that's really hard to imagine. How could you be more diverse than that?
But amazingly, this diversity springs from an almost sterile soil.
About 80% or thereabouts in most tropical forests of all the nutrients are in the living biomass. So when you cut the forest down and burn it, that means you get a couple years of nutrients from the ashes and that all leaches away and you've got nothing. That's why tropical rainforest destruction is so terrible. There's nothing in the soil.
If you had clear cuts like in the Pacific Northwest, those would probably never come back to primary forest.
Gary Hartshorn is an ecologist with the World Wildlife Fund. He's developing pilot programs for sustainable use of the rainforest.
Ecotourism is another classic example of a fairly benign use of these forests, and as a case here with the Explorama Lodge, it generates a lot of local employment, a lot of income for the people. So that's really beneficial, but you know, how far can we go with that? And we can't protect the entire Amazon as tourist lodges.
And that's something that Al Gentry knows all too well.
I kept losing study sites and all these areas disappearing. One of the most dramatic was a ridge in western Ecuador, about 90 new species for science. In 1986, they cut the forest down, and those are all species all went extinct. Nobody knew or cared. And when I first started coming here, and for some years thereafter, there were animals everywhere. Now there's none.
What do you think about the effects of ecotourism on something like this?
Well, ecotourism has saved this patch of forest.
And for Dr. Gentry, that means the opportunity to continue to do what he loves best.
A lot of things in the plot haven't been named. Clearly the surface of the moon is far better known than the canopy of the rainforest.
But that may change if Richard Ryle, the founder of International Expeditions, gets his way. Using the profits from workshops like this, he's planning on building walkways suspended in the canopy of the rainforest. They'll be part of a rainforest education and research project called the ASEER Foundation. It'll be open to scientists and tourists sometime next year. Still to come, Mother Nature's pharmacy, the rainforest. Look closely, and you may see hidden within the tangled vines and exotic trees of this forest treatments for muscle spasms and blood clots, headaches and asthma. This is Mother Nature's pharmacy, the source of 1/3 of our medicines.
This, like the Jimson weed and like another plant in Australia, have been used by Aborigines all over the world, and they have the weird habit of wadding that leaf up and sticking it behind their ear.
Jim Duke is an expert in medicinal plants who works at the U.S. Department of Agriculture.
3 years ago, my wife went to the doctor and said, "I'm very dizzy. What can you do for me?" And he gave her a white patch to stick behind her ear. That white patch contains scopolamine. And scopolamine is one of the alkaloids that occurs in this leaf.
Suffering from a herniated disc in his neck, Jim had his doubts about joining our trip. But as he explained, something as common in the rainforest as papaya could be one of the cures for his condition.
The chymopapain will dissolve that disc that's impinging on the nerve that's going to this arm. And I really think the future medicines will still be derived from species that we haven't even named out there yet.
Our beautiful flowers.
Used locally to treat abscesses.
The roots, it's medicine.
Used for anemia.
We could find an answer to AIDS in the rainforest. There's a cure out there for everything.
And you'd be surprised where you might find it.
It's a green.
What is this?
This is cacao.
Cocoa beans.
This is cocoa.
This is where you get your chocolate from. This is also an important a source of three very important medicines: theobromine, aminophylline.
Well, that was Greek to me, but not to one member of our class.
Very closely related, and they have the effect of opening up the airways.
Dr. Linnea Smith is more used to getting her medicines from the pharmacy. An ex-eco-tourist from Wisconsin, she fell in love with this rainforest a year ago and stayed. Now, the only doctor for many miles around, she's known simply as La Doctora.
This is where you hang out your shingle, huh?
Well, such as it is, this is it.
Linnea wouldn't be here without Explorama and ecotourism. The lodge gives her a place to stay and to run her clinic, and departing tourists donate their leftover medicines. But it can be a lonely and frustrating job.
Here, I knew that there wouldn't be any x-ray, there wouldn't be any lab, there wouldn't be anybody to talk to. There are times when it's very, very frightening, when somebody's life really is in your hands. And it doesn't happen nearly as often as it does on the TV shows where it happens every week. But it does happen sometimes.
That evening, unexpectedly, it did happen.
She started having labor last night. The labor continued apparently normally till about dawn, and then it stopped.
Her name is Isabel, and she had traveled hours by dugout canoe just to reach La Doctora, perhaps her last hope.
Another young woman had died last week in similar circumstances.
And we were racing upriver to the nearest settlement with a clinic, still 2 hours away.
If we're lucky, we'll have electric lights at least until about midnight, and hopefully this should be over by then. There is a surgery room which doesn't have much in it, but it does at least have an operating table.
But saving Isabel and her baby's life would mean performing an operation that Linnea had never done before. One of our fellow eco-tourists, Dr. Ward Powers, had volunteered to help.
Have you ever done a cesarean section?
Nope, this is going to be a new experience. I've assisted on several.
Are you nervous?
Oh, why should I be nervous?
Dr. Powers, have you ever done a cesarean section?
Yes.
How many years ago was that?
25 years ago.
Our voyage seemed endless, but the tragic irony of this night was that saving lives has now become one of the greatest threats to the rainforest because of overpopulation.
Here it is the environmental threat. Because of a bunch of do-gooders like me coming down with things like penicillin and vaccinations, all of those kids grow to adulthood. And as soon as they're 15 years old, you're not talking about a 20-year generation here. As soon as they're 15 years old, they start reproducing families of their own. So they need to cut down a few more trees to build a house and another acre or two of trees to grow banana plants.
But this night on the Amazon, all that was important was the survival of a mother and her baby. It had been a long, hard night for Linnea and Ward, but today it was all worth it.
And this is her brand new son, and she's much happier now than she was yesterday. Although this is a young lady with incredible stamina. She was smiling yesterday, even when she was having labor pains and couldn't hardly sit still. God, she looks good.
Without electricity, the two doctors had been forced to operate by flashlight and kerosene lantern.
Without you, this would never happen.
Without me, she and he would both be dead by this morning, but that's life around here.
Life outside on the river went on. We wanted to meet one of these families. How do they live, and what do they think of us eco-tourists? Pam Bucar is an ex-eco-tourist who now helps to manage the Explorama Lodge. And these were friends of hers, Alberto and Ilda, and their family.
From Iquitos, it's nice to see different faces.
White
people, blonde-headed people, curly-haired people. It's fun to see people.
I asked their oldest daughter, Mari, what she thought of us camera-toting tourists.
She says she's happy that people want to come and spend some time in her house.
Pam told us that this is a typical home for families along the river. Alberto and Ilda live here with their 7 children, and most of what they need comes from the land around them.
And then boiled bananas, which is a staple of everything. Now that the water's high, it's a little bit more difficult to find fish because there's more water. So a lot of times they eat mostly bananas and yuca and rice and beans and not too much fish.
Do they always sleep right on the floor?
Right on the floor. It's some kind of usually blanket or sheets and lots of clothes and everything in the mosquito net with them.
Do the mosquitoes bother her at night if she doesn't have a mosquito net?
Dice, si duermes en la noche sin mosquitero, te fastidia los
Alberto told me that his land went as far back as you want to go. But it's these fields, close to the river, that are most valuable.
Wow, that's all it takes. Do you sell food in Iquitos for money?
Depende. Yep. They sell them, right?
This thing is sharp.
They can farm this land indefinitely because it's renewed by the silt from periodic flooding. But farther in, the thin soil of the rainforest would be quickly exhausted.
Alberto, are you worried about the forest being cut down?
De las plantas de la selva.
His look told me that this was an almost incomprehensible question.
They look at the jungle from a different standpoint. They look at for survival and being able to grow enough bananas to buy enough notebooks so their kids can go to school and have clothes.
Survival is usually the issue here in the Amazon. Just some miles away, deeper in the jungle, the Yagua Indians, the original inhabitants of this area, are also struggling to survive. Though this may look real, it's actually a show. The grass skirt, the headdress, even the blowgun. Nice shot. Strictly for tourists. Here we can trade hats for necklaces, t-shirts for blowguns. But remembering our eco-training, we pass up the jaguar paws and monkey heads. Eco-tourists argue that at least this trade encourages the Yaguas to keep alive traditions and crafts that might otherwise be lost in a world that for the Yaguas will never be the same. Coming up next, the rainforest at night. There's a certain magic to the rainforest at night. The air is thick with scents and sounds, and you can almost feel the jungle around you. For an eco-tourist, it may be time to swap stories about the day's adventures, or to simply kick back and listen to some music. Or, if you're really dedicated, you go out and chase bats.
This is a bigger one.
Cesar's got it.
It's biting it.
What do we got, Cesar? Uroderma bilobatum.
Maybe. They got teeth, don't they?
Yeah, pretty good teeth. This is a nice one. He has nice white stripes on the face. He's got a nifty racing stripe right down the back.
This is Don Wilson's idea of a great time. He's a Batman, and he lives for the night.
So this is 12 species now you've caught here in the last 2 nights. Makes it 12?
13. We got two new ones tonight.
2 new ones tonight.
11 last night.
Don's fellow zoologist, Cesar Romero, has identified 120 species of bats in Peru alone. They snare their subjects in web-like nets strung across potential bat flightways.
Ooh, this is really a nifty little bat. This is, it's very tiny. Got these sort of bright yellow ears, and most bats don't have much color on them. This is another one with white lines on the face. This one's in the genus Vampiressa.
Did you come across Count Dracula last night?
No, we didn't catch any vampires. Vampire bats are pretty rare in this type of forest.
Actually, bats are a critical part of the rainforest ecosystem. They spread seeds, eat insects, and pollinate plants.
Another one. It's got a little horn on its nose, huh?
A little, it's called a leaf nose. The family is called leaf nose bats.
Now, does that have a function, that little?
It's probably involved in the echolocation system.
A lot of the work that naturalists do in the field is really just tedious work, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. A lot of it is long hours of hard work for gathering little bits of data, and
So what do you think drives somebody to be a naturalist, to go out at night in the jungle and catch bats?
Oh man, you really have to be hooked on it, obviously. I mean, it's not the sort of thing that just anybody is willing to go and do. But the people that are, I mean, once you start, and frequently, you know, you get hooked at an early age, and once you decide that this is what you want to do, then just nothing stops you. I mean, areas like this are just absolutely fantastic.
And another one.
Kind of interesting.
Bats. You gotta love them. In fact, just 100 yards away, we found a night-blooming cactus, one of the most amazing flowers you'll ever see. And surprise,
this particular one, which has this gorgeous, huge flower, is pollinated by bats. Only bats could effectively pollinate it. Each flower, though, only opens for one night. By breakfast time tomorrow, this will be over. It will not open again. It will not bloom again. Tonight is the one chance this flower has to get pollinated and to form seed to keep this species going.
night-blooming cactus, leaf-nosed bats. They took some effort, but that's part of being an ecotourist. One of my fellow travelers, Rebecca Rose, felt the same way.
So would you recommend this to other people?
Oh, I absolutely would. Not to everybody. It's not for everybody.
Why?
Well, I mean, you know, you see incredible things, but you have to work for it, as you know. I mean, we saw the Hawaiian today, you know, an incredible endangered bird that I've read about so many times and seen so many pictures of, and I actually saw it today, and it was just the thrill of a lifetime, but it was not easy getting there, not easy, you know, and it really shouldn't be. It shouldn't be easy to see those things.
Even though you've got the bugs and the mud and the cold showers and sleeping on the floor, none of that bothers you?
No. No, I don't really think it bothers any of the people here. It's just part of it. And actually, the more primitive, the better, because the more primitive conditions you're living under, the less impact you feel like you're having on the forest. I've really crossed a line, and the line is actually being here and actually experiencing the rainforest.
We had come here to find out if ecotourism can help save the rainforest. But over our week, we had discovered that it may be the rainforest that can save us.
So we hope in the last half hour we've given you a better appreciation for the true value of the rainforest. But don't take our word for it. Come on down and see for yourself. After all, the world's a lot smaller than you think.